Welcome to our comprehensive guide on navigating naturalization waivers, specifically English and Civics test exemptions. In this video, we will clarify the key differences between the English and Civics waivers, explain the age and residency rule versus the medical disability waiver, show you how to confirm your exemption status, and prepare you for interview logistics including interpreters and representation. Let's begin with a quick note about legal information. This content is educational and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Immigration rules and agency practices can change, and individual circumstances vary widely. For personalized advice, please consult a licensed immigration attorney or an accredited representative. Here's the roadmap for today. First, we'll separate the English and Civics waivers. Next, we'll cover eligibility through age and time in the U.S. and through medical disability using Form N-648. After that, we'll explain how to confirm exemption status and what to expect at the interview. Then, we will clarify who can accompany you, who can represent you, and who can interpret. We'll also share warnings about changing protocols and finish with pro tips and quizzes. The English and Civics waivers are distinct. Under the age and time rule, applicants who are 50 years old with 20 years as a permanent resident or 55 years old with 15 years as a permanent resident are exempt from the English requirement only. They must still take the Civics test, but may take it in their native language using an interpreter. By contrast, a disability-based exemption can waive both English and Civics if a licensed physician certifies a physical or developmental disability or mental impairment that prevents learning or demonstrating this knowledge. This requires filing Form N-648 and having it properly completed. This table summarizes the two primary paths. The age and time rule waives English but not Civics, though the Civics exam may be taken in the applicant's native language with an interpreter. The disability rule can waive both English and Civics when supported by a properly completed Form N-648. In both scenarios, interpreters are allowed where needed, but using an independent interpreter is safest for disability-based cases. To confirm your exemption status, first check for any USCIS communications, especially requests for evidence or appointment notices. Typically, the online portal will not display a clear N-648 approved status. Therefore, assume your N-648 is under review unless you received an RFE suggesting issues with the physician's certification. The final decision about the exemption is usually made by the interviewing officer on the day of the interview. If your N-648 was completed correctly and appears sufficient, you should prepare for an interview that focuses on the N-400 application and your personal history instead of the standard tests. If language assistance is needed, bring an appropriate interpreter as permitted by your waiver category. This decision flow starts by checking if the applicant qualifies under the 50/20ths or 55/15ths rule. If so, the English test is waived, but the Civics test remains, and an interpreter may be used for Civics in the applicant's native language. If the age and time rule does not apply, the next branch checks whether the applicant has a qualifying disability substantiated by a properly completed N-648 by a licensed physician. If that disability exemption applies, both English and Civics are waived, and the interview will focus on the N-400 and personal history. An independent interpreter is recommended. If neither path applies, both tests are required in English. The flow also includes a branch for receiving an RFE. If an RFE is issued, the applicant should correct deficiencies and respond promptly. If no RFE is issued, the final decision is made by the officer at the interview. At the interview, a support person, such as a family member, may accompany the applicant to provide moral support, but this does not grant any right to speak on the applicant's behalf. To speak for the applicant or manage legal questions, a representative must have filed Form G-28 well before the interview. For interpretation, USCIS usually requires an unbiased, independent interpreter. While officers have discretion, relying on family members as interpreters is risky and should not be assumed permissible. A support person offers emotional assistance and may sit in on the interview, but cannot answer questions or advocate. A representative, by contrast, must file Form G-28. Once recognized, they can address legal questions and advocate. Interpreters are distinct from representatives. USCIS typically requires interpreters to be unbiased and independent. Using a family member as an interpreter is often disallowed and, even when permitted at the officer's discretion, remains unpredictable. Therefore, arranging a professional, independent interpreter is the safer approach. This timeline outlines interview day. First is arrival and check-in, followed by identity verification. The officer then reviews your N400 application. Next, waiver applicability is determined. If you qualify under age and time, you will take the civics test, potentially in your native language, with an interpreter. If you have a valid N648 exemption, you should not take the tests. Instead, the interview focuses on your application details and personal history. Finally, the officer provides closing instructions and any next steps. Independent interpreters reduce risk and align with USCIS requirements for unbiased interpretation. Family members may sometimes be permitted, but that is entirely at the interviewing officer's discretion and should not be relied upon. Under the 50/20 or 55/15 rule, the interpreter assists specifically with the civics portion, since the English test is waived, but the civics test remains. For disability-based N648 cases, a professional interpreter is recommended to ensure clear understanding during the application interview. Quiz question. If you qualify under the 50/20 or 55/15 rule, which test are you exempt from? Options are A. Civics only, B. English only, C. Both English and civics, D. D. Neither. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. English only. The 50/20 or 55/15 rule exempts the English requirement but not the civics test. You may take the civics test in your native language with an interpreter if you qualify under this rule. Quiz question. Who is the safest choice to interpret during an interview when a medical waiver N648 is involved? Options are A. Immediate family member, B. Independent, professional interpreter, C. Friend who is a neighbor, D. No interpreter needed. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The safest choice is B. An independent, professional interpreter. USCIS prefers unbiased interpreters, and relying on family members is often disallowed or left to officer discretion, which adds risk. Agency processes change over time. Do not rely on procedures from years past. The absence of printed study materials at a biometrics appointment could simply reflect digitization or indicate that your case is flagged for a medical exemption like N648. Always prioritize current notices, official instructions, and communication received directly from USCIS. Bring original documents, including your N648, identification, and any medical records supporting your disability claim. Unless you receive an RFE, assume the N648 remains under review until the interview. If you qualify under the age and time rule, study civics using native language resources. Schedule a professional, independent interpreter ahead of time. If you want someone to speak on your behalf, ensure a representative has filed Form G28 in advance. Remember that English and civics waivers are separate. The age and time rule waives English only, whereas a properly supported medical disability via N648 can waive both tests. An independent interpreter is generally the safest choice. Finally, be aware that the formal decision on your exemption is often made by the officer at the interview. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, please like, share, and subscribe for more immigration guidance. We'd love to hear your questions or your experience with English and civics exemptions in the comments below.